My brother fired me the same week he became the owner of our family dealership. No conversation, no warning. Just a signature at the bottom of a folded letter and a quick handshake like we were strangers finalizing a transaction. He did not know that I had just signed a deal of my own. My name is Brandon, and for nearly 17 years, I ran the operations side of our dealership. I was not the face customers saw first. That was my brother. He handled the charm, the weekend sales events, the radio spots. I handled everything else: inventory, logistics, staffing, vendor contracts, compliance, finance, the engine that kept us moving. We used to joke that he was the showroom and I was the service bay. Different ends of the building, but both essential. Things started changing after our father retired. He handed over equal ownership to the two of us, which at the time felt fair. We had both earned it in our own way. But equal on paper does not always mean equal in reality. Over the years, he started pulling more influence, and I let it happen. It was easier that way, less friction. I told myself that if the work was getting done, and we were turning a profit, then it did not matter who sat at the head of the table. That was a mistake. The shift started gradually. He began bringing in outside consultants, people I had never heard of, marketing specialists, sales trainers, strategic advisors. He said they were there to modernize the dealership and give us a competitive edge. I knew what it really meant. He wanted control, not shared responsibility, control. Still, I kept my head down and did the work. I had built our internal systems from the ground up. I knew where every dollar went, which vendors we could lean on in a crunch, which tech partners to avoid. My side of the business was stable, quiet even. And that was a problem, because quiet does not get you credit. Not in his world. When our father officially sold his share and stepped away for good, everything accelerated. My brother acquired the full stake through private financing, which I had not been privy to. He became sole owner, just like that. One meeting with legal, one transfer of power, and I became an employee in a company I had helped build. He called me into his office on a Thursday afternoon. I remember the time because I had just finished a call with a fleet client, one of our biggest. I walked in, expecting a discussion about the expansion we had been planning. Instead, he slid a white envelope across the desk and said, "I think it is time we move in a different direction." He said it like he was reading from a script. Not a hint of hesitation, just clean corporate language. I opened the envelope. Inside, a single-page letter. My position was being eliminated due to restructuring. Effective immediately. A month of severance. Health coverage through the end of the month. A clause that I could not solicit our clients or vendors for the next year. That last part made me laugh. He knew I would never poach business. He also knew I did not need to, because just 4 days earlier I had quietly finalized a contract with a national logistics platform looking to pilot an auto retail program in our region. They had the funding. They had the infrastructure. What they needed was someone with ground-level experience in operations, someone who knew how the real mechanics of car sales worked. They needed someone like me. They offered me full operational oversight and a generous equity stake in their regional division. I had not told anyone yet, not even my wife. I wanted to be sure the paperwork was complete. It was. So I sat there, across from my brother, watching him deliver a performance he had probably rehearsed in his head. His tone was cool, his body language rehearsed. But I noticed something. His hands were fidgeting with the edge of the desk, tapping. Just barely. He expected resistance, maybe even an argument. But I did not give him that. I simply stood up, folded the letter, and said, "You just freed up my calendar." He blinked, confused. "Thanks for the opportunity," I said. "I am sure I will see you around." I walked out, past the showroom floor, past the finance desk, past the service window where a few techs were filling out work orders. No one said anything. They had no idea what had just happened. I got in my truck, closed the door, and sat for a minute. Not angry, not hurt, just processing. The silence was strange, not uncomfortable, but different. Like the moment after an engine stops running and all you can hear is your own breath. That night, I emailed the team at the new company. We moved up our start date. I was no longer leaving the dealership. I was launching the competition. Over the next week, I received a handful of texts from staff. Not many, just a few people asking why my office was empty. I kept it professional, said I was moving on, that I had no hard feelings. That was mostly true, but my brother had underestimated something. He thought ownership gave him full control. What he forgot was that respect is earned, not inherited. And in business, relationships are the currency that matters most. Within 2 weeks of my departure, 2 of our mid-tier vendors reached out to me directly, not to break their contracts, but to ask where I was going next. They said they liked working with me because I was clear, honest, and predictable. They did not like how things had started shifting under the new leadership. Too many moving parts. No transparency. I told them I could not discuss specifics, and I did not ask them for anything. But word travels fast in our world. By the end of the month, I had a small team in place. 2 former colleagues joined me independently, without solicitation. One of them was our inventory coordinator. The other was a service manager who had quietly been looking for an exit anyway. We set up shop in a small leased office outside of town. Nothing fancy, just 4 desks, some whiteboards, and a shared kitchen. But it was ours. I still passed by the old dealership once in a while. Not out of nostalgia, just habit. 17 years builds a kind of muscle memory. You know how the lot looks at different times of day. You know when sales are slow just by the number of test drives you do not see happening. I noticed something. The volume had dipped. Not dramatically, but enough to be obvious if you knew what to look for. Fewer cars rotated on the front line. The weekend balloons and banners were still up, but the energy felt thinner. My brother was still doing the weekend push, still recording the spots, still posting his morning motivational videos. But behind all of that, I could see it. The decline had begun, and he did not know why yet. He did not know that the systems I had built were not just spreadsheets and schedules. They were relationships. They were consistency. They were a rhythm that made everything work without needing constant visibility. He had pulled the engine and was now wondering why the wheels were starting to lock up. I kept my distance, not because I was bitter, but because I had work to do. The new platform we launched was lean, tech-forward, and operationally tight. We were not trying to copy the traditional dealership model. We were trying to fix what was broken about it. Slow approvals, inconsistent pricing, lack of transparency for buyers. We wanted to make it feel like less of a hustle and more of a service. And people noticed. Our first month was modest, but the feedback was strong. We did not even advertise. It was all word of mouth. People who had dealt with me before and trusted how I did business. I thought about calling my brother once, just to clear the air. Maybe even wish him well. But then I remembered that look on his face when he handed me that letter. It was not just control he wanted, it was removal. He wanted me out of the picture, out of his shadow. Even though, if we are being honest, I was never in his way. I was just not loud about what I built. Now, I am building something again, and this time it has my name on it, and he has no idea what is coming next. The funny thing about momentum is you rarely notice when you have it until you see someone else start losing it. By the end of our second month in operation, we had tripled our projected interest list. Not customers yet, just people reaching out, curious about what we were doing. Some of them were former clients from the old dealership. A few were vendors, asking if we would be open to partnerships. One or two were competitors, trying to figure out if we were a threat. I kept every conversation straightforward. We were not trying to make noise, we were just solving problems. That is how I have always operated, quietly, methodically, with the long view in mind. Meanwhile, the dealership I helped build was starting to show cracks. Not in a dramatic, collapsing way, at least not yet, but in the little details that only someone like me would notice. Inventory sitting a little too long. A shift in vendor tone. One of the parts suppliers had already reached out to me, frustrated that their usual point of contact was no longer responding in a timely manner. I did not gloat. I did not even mention it to my team. That was not the goal. I was not looking to burn bridges or start a war, but I also was not about to pretend the silence did not speak volumes. The dealership was slowing down, and the reason was simple. It was being run by someone who thought charisma was a substitute for structure. Do not get me wrong. My brother is a natural in the spotlight. Always has been. He could sell a 2-door coupe to a family of 6 and make them feel like they got the deal of the year. But selling is not running. And ownership, real ownership, means being accountable for the parts you do not see. It means knowing what to do when the market shifts or when a key vendor goes dark, or when a technician walks out mid-week because payroll messed up again. It means keeping the engine running even when no one is clapping for you. That is what he never understood. Around month 3, I got a message through a mutual friend. It was vague, but the tone was clear. He was asking questions about me, about what I was working on, about who I was talking to. I said nothing. I had no reason to. The team I had built, small as it was running like a tuned engine. We had 3 pilots going across different parts of the city. One focused on fleet logistics, one on customer direct sales, and one that married digital browsing with physical delivery. The model was not traditional. But that was the point. Traditional was the reason dealerships were bleeding margins. Traditional was the reason people hated shopping for cars. Traditional was what I'd just been fired from. So no, I was not looking back. But I was paying attention. One afternoon, I was at a coffee shop near the West Side lot where we had started our hybrid delivery pilot, just reviewing some paperwork and checking vendor logistics. Nothing flashy. I looked up and saw one of our former finance associates walk in. She spotted me immediately. She gave me this look, half relief, half confusion. "You doing okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Better than okay." She sat down, did not even ask, just sat across from me like no time had passed. "You know, he said you left voluntarily, right?" I smiled. "That what he's telling people? He made it sound like you were burned out, that you needed a break." That part almost made me laugh. Burned out? I was the most consistent part of that place for 17 years. I never took more than 4 days off at a time. I showed up when other people called out. I handled compliance, audits, state licensing, vendor negotiations, warranty disputes, employee disputes, tech failures, all of it. Burned out? Number, I was just done pretending silence was the same thing as loyalty. I asked her how things were going back there. She shrugged. "Feels off, like the ground's shifting and no one wants to say it out loud. Sales are still moving, but slower. Everyone's tense." I thanked her for being honest. She asked what I was doing next. "Building," I said, quietly. She nodded. "Let me know if you ever need help." I did not hire her then. I was not collecting names or trying to rebuild my old team. But I remembered that conversation. I remembered the way she looked. Not desperate, not bitter, just disappointed. Like she had signed up for something better than what it had become. It stuck with me. By month 4, our numbers were clean enough to take to early investors. I had not planned to take outside funding. I wanted to keep control, but growth had outpaced our projections, and I needed infrastructure, real infrastructure. Office space, fleet vehicles, dedicated service techs, a system that could scale. We brought in a modest round, enough to stretch, not enough to lose control, and with it, something shifted. I started getting invitations, industry panels, local news blurbs, even a write-up in one of the trade journals about alternative dealership models. I kept it low-key, gave the generic quotes, nothing that would invite a response from across town, but I knew my brother saw it. One morning, I got an email from a shared contact we had both known since high school. He ran a media group and had done some PR work for the old dealership back in the day. The message was short. "Is it true? You're behind this new thing? Impressive. Let me know if you want to talk coverage." I did not respond. It was not about pride. It was about clarity. I was not trying to prove anything. I was trying to build something that did not require explanation. That is the difference between surviving and evolving. Around the 5th month, I got word through a vendor that the dealership was restructuring again, which usually means someone is getting cut, or many someones. Sure enough, within the next 2 weeks, 2 more people reached out to me independently, one from sales, one from service. I asked each of them the same thing. "What do you want that you are not getting?" Both said the same word. Stability. Not money, not titles, stability. And that was when I realized my brother did not fire me because he thought I was a threat. He fired me because he thought I was replaceable. He thought the structure would hold because he thought it came from the top. But the truth is, I was the structure. Not because I am smarter or more talented, but because I understood that a business is not built on one person's ambition. It is built on thousands of small decisions, made over time with care. He thought ownership meant you could delete the foundation and rebuild with faster bricks. What he forgot was that the dealership was never about speed. It was about trust. And when that goes, everything else starts to slip. By month 6, we were profitable, not wildly, not unicorn level, but sustainably. Clean books, transparent margins, predictable revenue. We did not rely on incentives or balloon weekends. We did not upsell junk warranties. We gave people what they needed without pressure. And they came back. One of the customers I had known from the dealership days, an older guy, sharp, no nonsense, came in to test one of our hybrids. He looked around, took it all in, and said, "This feels different." "It is," I told him, on purpose. He ended up buying the car, and before he left he said, "You always ran things right. Glad you landed on your feet." I did not correct him, because the truth is I had not landed, I had launched. The day we signed the lease on our second location, it rained. Not a storm, just a steady downpour. The kind that makes the roads shine and slows traffic enough for you to notice everything. I stood outside the new warehouse for a long time before going in. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to remember what it felt like. That moment, the pause before the next step. 6 months before, I was out, pushed aside like a worn-out tool by someone who had never learned what it took to hold a thing together. Now I had a growing team, 2 physical locations, and a customer base that had become more loyal than I had ever expected. But more than that, I had my name back. Not in the literal sense. I was not out chasing headlines, but people in our network, the real ones, knew who had built what. They knew which approach was working, and which one was starting to crack under its own ego. And cracks were showing. The old dealership had gone through 3 sales managers in 5 months. One had left after 2 weeks. The head technician had started his own mobile repair service on the side, mostly to deal with frustrated customers who could not get through the service desk. The last time I drove by, the lot looked thinner. Not empty, but less alive. The banners were still up, the lights still bright, but the energy was gone. You can always tell when a place is just running on fumes. People stop making eye contact. The smiles feel forced. The lot gets quiet even when the music's playing. It is the silence that gives it away. My brother still had not reached out, not directly, but the way the industry works, everything circles back eventually. A vendor let it slip that he was looking for fresh direction. Another said they had not been paid on time in months, and then, one afternoon, I got a call. Blocked number. I normally would not answer, but something told me to. It was him. He started like nothing had happened, casual, polite. "Hey, just wanted to see how you're doing." I said I was doing well, that was all. He paused, then said something I did not expect. "I think I made a mistake." Just like that. No build-up, no excuse. Just the sentence sitting there, raw. I waited. He said the dealership was not performing like he thought it would. That turnover was high, margins were thinning, and he felt like he was missing something. I almost laughed, but not out of spite. Out of the sheer irony of it. He had finally noticed what I had been holding together all those years. I did not gloat. I did not rub it in. That was not the point. Instead, I asked one question. "What are you looking for?" He hesitated. "Honestly, I do not know anymore. I thought taking over would feel different." That line stuck with me. I thought taking over would feel different. That is the trap. Thinking that power changes things. That owning the keys means you understand the engine. But it does not. I wished him well, I meant it, and I ended the call without offering help, advice, or a handout. Not because I was bitter, but because some lessons have to be lived. The next few months moved fast. We opened the second location quietly, no ribbon cuttings, no announcements. Just clean systems, well-trained staff, and a small group of customers who knew they were getting something better than just a sale. Our third location was already mapped out by then. It was not about competing anymore. It was about expanding something that worked. I hired carefully, built systems that did not need me to hover, delegated without letting go of the mission. It was not perfect, no business is, but it was solid. And then something happened I did not expect. One of the regional auto groups reached out, not to buy us, but to learn from us. They had been tracking our growth, noticed our return rate was almost non-existent. They wanted to understand our process. I took the meeting reluctantly. We talked through logistics, tech integrations, customer flow. They asked if we would consider licensing the model to them. That is when it clicked. What I had built was no longer just a business. It was a blueprint, a way forward in an industry still clinging to outdated tricks and high-pressure tactics. And if I was careful, if I stayed grounded, it could scale without losing its soul. I built a licensing arm, quietly, with the same steady, deliberate pace that had carried me this far. By the end of year 1, we were profitable, scalable, and operating in 3 cities. I did not plaster my name anywhere. I did not go back to the dealership to gloat. I did not respond to passive-aggressive posts online. I just kept building. One night, after a long day, I went for a drive. Not in a flashy car, just a solid, clean vehicle from our own fleet. I drove past the old dealership one more time. The lot was half full. The lights flickered slightly. The place looked tired. And that is when I realized I did not feel anger anymore. I felt distance. I had moved past it, past the betrayal, past the silence, past needing to prove I was right, because I had done something better than win. I had built something that could stand on its own, and no one could fire me from it. Not now, not ever.